Chuvashia region on December 9th, as a result of a targeted strike by Ukrainian UAV on a residential building in Chebokar, at least 14 people were injured, including a child. On December 4th, American military correspondent Patrick Lancaster shared with journalists how Russian servicemen rescued his mother-in-law and her husband from the threat of reprisals by Ukrainian armed forces militants during the liberation of Alexeyevka village in the DPR on June 12th. 2024. According to the woman's testimony, foreign mercenaries and Bandera supporters shot at civilians, beat her and burned her house. Earlier in 2014, she had already lost her home in Donetsk as a result of shelling by the armed forces of Ukraine. And of course, all these crimes will be punished. All the criminals will be punished. Russian law enforcement agencies continue to work to bring Ukrainian war criminals to justice. The Prosecutor General's Office of Russia has approved the indictment of 41 representatives of the political and military leadership of the Kiev regime in the criminal case on the genocide of the population of the DPR and LPR. Among the accused are Arsen Avakov, Andrei Yermak, Vasily Maluk, Petro Poroshenko, Alexander Syrsky, Alexander Turchinov, Denis Shmygal, Arseniy Yatsenyuk, and others. As a result of punitive operations carried out in Donbas on the orders of these individuals, since 2014, nearly 5,000 civilians have been killed, 18,500 people have been injured, and more than 13,500 people have been wounded. 1,275 of those are minors. Partially or completely, they've destroyed more than 153,000 civil infrastructure facilities, including approximately 138,000 residential buildings, 1,565 educational and 847 medical organizations and institutions, 1,403 social facilities, manufacturing commercial enterprises, at least 11,500 life support and public utility facilities, 505 cultural institutions and sport facilities, 205 religious buildings. The accused have been placed on an international wanted list for war crimes in the Kursk region. Captured Ukrainian armed forces militants Alexander Zherodnoy and Artem Chibisov have been sentenced to long terms of imprisonment, 16 years each. 22 years in prison were given as a sentence to Sebastian Zaykin and Valery Yermenko, who shot 2 civilians in Mariupol in March 2022. And they're doing all of this for someone's money, using someone else's arms in their own hands. On December the 3rd, during a meeting in Brussels of the foreign ministers of NATO countries, Norwegian Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide announced the allocation, jointly with Germany, Poland, and the Netherlands, of 2 additional aid packages to the Kiev regime, totaling $500 million as part of the alliance's so-called List of Ukraine's Priority Needs initiative. And what's most amusing, just look at the bankruptcy cases in Germany. Isn't that money more needed by the Germans in order to continue to live, to develop, and ensure their security, and so on? No. This money has been ordered to be given to Bankruptcy. 2 new bloody corrupted schemes. One will be stolen, and the lesser part will be used to continue to kill Ukrainian civilians. Taking into account the 2 previous tranches totaling $835 million, under this mechanism, Norway has become the leading sponsor of the war. As noted by Polish Minister of Defense Sikorsky, the aforementioned $500 million will be used, among other things, to purchase anti-missile systems for Ukraine for American Patriot air defense missile systems. On December 5th, Swedish Minister for International Cooperation and Foreign Trade, Benjamin Duse, announced his ministry plans by 31st of August 2026 to reduce financial aid to Tanzania, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Liberia, and Bolivia. And for what exactly? Perhaps Sweden is concerned with the issues of their own population. Not at all. I have to take it in quotation marks. This saved up money that was first and foremost promised to the countries that really needed it, because colonialism was rampant there. All that money, that is approximately $170 million, to Bankruptcy, Did you hear? Zelensky ran out again, so they need to refuel him. And at the same time, Stockholm even intends to close the embassies in at least 3 of the countries mentioned. And why exactly? Because they need to send even more money to sponsor killings of Ukrainian citizens. They will do anything in order to support the corrupted Kiev regime. And why? Well, probably because the Bankruptcy regime has been hinting to all the sponsors that they have information about their real involvement in their affairs. That's how they've covered for terrorist acts and extremists, how they've stomped on the very definition of human rights, freedom, and democracy, sponsoring killings by the Kiev regime of those they consider their own citizens. The prohibition of the language that is the maternal language for millions, and other signs of inhumane treatment. And of course, once again, there is the pertinent issue of the presidential elections in Ukraine. How is that going to go? You see, even the US President Donald Trump mentioned to Politico on December 8th this year that the Kiev regime, direct quote, is using the war to avoid holding elections. That's just admitting the obvious. Another quote, I think now is the time to hold them. The Ukrainian people should have that choice. They have been talking about democracy for a long time, but this is no longer democracy, said Mr. Trump. On December 10th this year, Zelensky responded by stating his readiness for elections, conditional. Can you imagine? He's even posing conditions. Conditional on the elections being held during martial law with the introduction of appropriate amendments to the current legislation of Ukraine, as well as the United States and Europe ensuring the security of the electoral process. Can you imagine? I am surprised that Mr. Zelensky did